depending on where you're joining from here today. Thank you for joining our weekly live stream. This is our live interview that we do each week to cover all things related to digital transformation. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we're an independent consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. We help clients with digital strategy, software selection, implementation planning, as well as actual implementation, program management, and change management. And of course, we also do business process management, which is something we'll talk about here today. Our topic for today is business process management in digital transformations. I'm going to introduce our guest in just a moment. I'm here live in Amsterdam in the Netherlands here with JJ, and I'll do the introduction in just a moment. But before I get to the introduction here, just a real quick logistical things. First of all, I mentioned this is a weekly live stream we do every Tuesday, same time, same place, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter we stream to. This interview is for the Transformation Ground Control podcast. So every week, every Wednesday, we release a new episode of this podcast. And again, it's called Transformation Ground Control. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to view current and past episodes of that show. So be sure to check that out. And then secondly, we're also going to take audience questions. So as we're going through the conversation here today, any questions you have for my guest and I, please feel free to drop those in the chat, and we'll get to those as quickly as we can. And while we're getting started, and as I introduce my guest here in just a moment, I'd love to hear from the audience where you're joining from today. We usually get a global audience from all over the world. And I know business process management is something that's of universal interest throughout the world. So I'd love to hear what city and country you're joining from. If you don't mind just dropping in the chat, city and country you're in, we'd love to hear from you. As I mentioned, JJ and I are both in the Netherlands here today. And with that all being said, JJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. So yes, welcome everybody. My name is, so officially name is Jean-Jacques Vossen. So JJ for people that call me short. I'm the CEO of a very nice Dutch headquartered company called Mavim. Mavim for US people and international people. Headquartered in the Netherlands, typical software company. So we have a huge manufacturing side, software development side in India, and global presence across the globe. And of course, for the US people, also a very nice team in the US selling and maintaining our software.
Great.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Thank you to the audience for being here. And we're going to get into a lot of stuff related to business process management. Can you tell us a little bit more about Mavim and just what the product does, just so maybe to give us an understanding of how you come at understanding the business process management world?
Yeah. So again, for those that are joining and are let's say the art of process managers, process management is of course not new.
Right.
So it's of course, if we're really honest, it's maybe even that people say, "Oh my God, not process manager again? Are you for real?" But the good news is now that people start to realize that process management, business process management, is getting more and more important because it's all about, if you are in a digital transformation, it's all about people. It's all about the people in a process working together, and of course supported by IT technology. And the three of that together, you need to make sure that you then can continue and improve the performance of your organization. The process management part is getting more and more important because people do realize, if I'm not designing my future state I want, how can I improve? So process management is, by certain companies claimed, it's reimagined, or it's reinvented, or it's back on the board. Because
Right.
there are some companies that really brought it back into the board level.
Right.
So
yeah, and I want to ask you a bunch of questions here today about how business process management works and some of the lessons you have from working with your customer base on your business process management platform with Mavim. But I want to ask the audience a quick question as we get started here. I'm just curious to hear, just to get a pulse from the audience on when you think business process management should start in a digital transformation. I'd love to see in the chat what you think, as far as either what you think should be as far as when business process management should start, or what you're doing with your current digital transformation. When are you starting business process management and how are you approaching it? And we're going to get into that here in just a moment, but I want to hear the audience's feedback first. So I guess just to start, I think we're both in agreement that business process management is very important to digital transformation. Why do you think it is that so many organizations overlook business process management or don't invest enough time and money in it?
The honest answer is that people do understand that they want to improve the performance of their organization. They do understand that the current way of working needs improvement. And then what they do normally is they check in what's going on in the world. They check in also in peers in their organization, and then they get advised by, for argument's sakes, by software vendors that say, "Look, I have a best practice. I can help you. Don't you worry. This is my partner in crime that will run this digital transformation engagement, avant la lettre, but then in template based." So they are in a urge. So they think they are in a hurry. They want to re-platform, and they trust the software vendor and they trust the implementation partner. In their view, rightly so.
Right.
And then certain things happen.
Yes. And
Yes.
let's talk about the certain things. There's
Yeah.
certain, let's call it economic self-interest that creates conflicts. And when I say economic self-interest, I'm not talking about the company that's implementing. I'm talking about software vendors and system integrators and their economic self-interest. How do their self-interest conflict with the necessity to do business process management the right way?
Yeah, so then, so of course, and I do understand the software vendors have targets. The software vendors have to make targets. They want to make targets, and it's in their interest that the implementation goes as fast as possible. That's also the same interest of the customers. We all want it to happen fast. The problem is, if you don't know what you want to achieve with your organization, that's what you need to do first. Because your software vendor wants to implement very fast the software. The software vendor has no domain interest and has no clue. What do you want to achieve with your organization? So there is the misalignment that a best practice of an implementation of a software package, the software is so highly configurable nowadays. You can do anything with the software. That's a good news, but you need to be very sure what you want to achieve with that process in my organization, with my people, with my customers, with my competition,
Right.
and not what the vendor thinks that you want to do. So you should own your own destiny.
Right.
And there's the conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a problem that's probably becoming more and more prevalent, in at least from what I've seen, just because you have so many on-premise legacy systems that are being sunset right around the same time. I mean, Microsoft and SAP and some of these other big software vendors are sunsetting their old products, which is understandable. That's part of lifecycle management for any solution. But the movement to the cloud is all happening in parallel with all these different vendors. So you have a bunch of different vendors telling the same thing, which is you need to switch now.
Yeah.
You need to go through this implementation now.
Yeah.
And if you have a deadline of, say, 2 years from now, you may think to yourself, well, I don't have time to do business process management. I need to just get on a new system.
There you go.
And that's what you're saying is that's a flawed way to approach.
Yeah. So and again, what we have with our customer base. So we have a proven track record with the following scenario. we have example customers that said, okay, yes, we are in a hurry. If you can commit, Mr. Software Vendor, that in 1.5 years you can do our implementation of this nice, highly configurable software package. They told me the following: we started the engagement, we took off the plane, but then we didn't know where to go to, and we didn't know where to land. This customer dared to say, let's fly back. Then he did the following: let's redesign our operating model. And let me give you an example. This company is in a business where they are servicing and maintaining car glass shields. So when you have a broken shield,
right,
they have 3,000 outlets in Europe. Every outlet has its own stock. But you should know, with all the new technology in glass, they have an SKU of maybe 100,000 different car glasses. So if my car glass is broken, where do I go? So what they had to first design, I need to redesign my warehouse principles. Where should I have my stock? And I need to redesign first the customer journey, because you can't go to a shop and say my car is broken and let's fix it. So they did first redesign, again, my operating model. How do I treat my customers? How's my logistics? How's my distribution? Done that, the design was clear, clip and clear, and very important, visualized in such a way that everybody agreed. So the company took maybe 3 months to redesign, and guess what happened with the implementation? Half time.
Mm.
Half time. Meaning they took off, lost 3 months, spent 3 months to do it again, redesign again, and then at the end in 6 months time implemented. So the 1.5 year planned brought back to a year, but they dared to fly back, did the phase 0 planning, redesign of the model, redesign the operating model, and that principle applied to the system integrator went live within 6 months.
Mm. That's interesting.
One example, and I have multi more.
Yeah.
But you need strong leadership, committed leaders that first think, who owns the destiny of my company?
Right.
Is it me or is it my system integrator?
Right.
Well, the audience will say, of course, the leader. Well,
That's not what all
you need
organizations.
strong leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. And you also talked about something that came up in an earlier conversation before this podcast today. You and I sat down with a professor at the University of Antwerp and I actually interviewed him for this podcast. He'll be on this podcast in the future. And he interviewed me for one of the shows that you produce at Mavim. And one of the things he talked about is he has a database of over 100,000 case studies that he's analyzed quantitatively and qualitatively in case studies for digital transformations. And one of the key root causes of success versus failure, and according to his research, is decision latency is what he called it. So in other words, how fast can a company make a decision during a digital transformation? And the ones that take longer to make decisions, not surprisingly, are more likely to fail. They're more likely to have budget overruns, time overruns, and that sort of thing. So what you're talking about here, it sort of addresses that root cause in the heart of why so many projects fail. Because if you do what you're saying, which is I define my future state business processes up front and what I want that future state vision to be, and then I go implement technology, you're more likely to succeed. You're more likely to finish on time, on budget.
Yeah.
But what do you say to organizations that say that they should, or system integrators that say that you don't need to worry about business process management? Our software has best practices. Our software will give you the answers of how your future state processes should be. So don't bother doing all this BPM stuff that JJ's talking about. Just go straight into the implementation and we'll do it for you. What do you think of that approach?
Yeah, so I understand them, and my advice to the audience is then, okay, if you have a best practice, please can you show me then?
Mm.
Show me the best practice for my type of company, in my typical industry, in such a visual way that if I'm, for example, one of the decision makers, that my board understands that you do have indeed the best practice, that I do understand that you indeed are a system integrator in my domain, visualized for my typical company from end-to-end processes, visualized in a way that I understand, my board understands, and then show me examples where you go to the details. For example, in how, as your advice in my case now, after Corona, how should I redesign my customer journey? Because my supply chain, in the old days, it needs to change.
Mm.
So show me in a way that I understand, because there are people that have that ready. They have indeed best practices. I know them. They have that visualized in the digital platform, and that digital platform is connected to then, if we all agree on this, yes, this is the way, then that is the design principle to do indeed the best practice implementation of then the solution, the real software.
Mm.
So we are more, or they have more or less the visualization of the future digital twin of your organization.
Yeah.
Used as a design towards your implementation design of your software.
Right.
So that would be the answer. Ask them to show. And the funny thing is, the best guys will not show software. They will show process models, operating models, how should you organize yourself, and then in visualizations that look like a PowerPoint, but now then in a digital format.
Right.
If you find those partners, guaranteed success.
Yeah. Yeah. And it gets to the point of how I think where you're going with this, it seems as though business process management isn't about technology workflows. That's part of business process management, but it's a small subset of a broader set of end-to-end processes. And yes, the technology you're deploying is going to have a role in that, but it's not just one system. Typically, there's manual processes or things that happen outside of a system. There's integrations to other systems. So being able to look at that entire thing end to end is a lot different than saying, no, I'm just going to implement this tiny little sliver of technology. Even if it's an ERP system, it's not going to do everything you need it to do. So you're going to have inevitably processes outside of the software workflows.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point.
Yeah. So again, and therefore, those parties you can find, they will have visualized, how should I set up my strategy? So what are my KPIs? Because the implementation is we have to be honest, it's not the big party. But you want to make sure that's fast, it's done according to what you want, and the money you will make after implementation. But during the implementation, let's say it's a strategy, then you need to process, but you also need to understand, how does my enterprise architecture look like? So the same platform should understand, I'm not going to replace everything. I'll replace a piece, but where are my interfaces? Because that's what you need to also to make sure that you don't, okay, funny, we have now a new platform, and oh, wait a minute. You will always have left legacy. You need to understand where is that, so that you understand that before you go live, you need to test that. So you need the total picture from your strategy. So how it's impacting my processes. What does it impact for the people? People need to understand.
Right.
Is it better or not? Will it improve? Will I be happy or not? Because you need to do that. Because if it's not clear to them, you found yourself all the people that will boycott your project.
Right.
So that the clarity upfront from a people, process, technology standpoint in the enterprise architecture, and then guided by principles like set KPIs, set principles, what do we want to achieve, so that everybody on a constant understands how hard it is, but we're doing it for a purpose.
Right.
The purpose needs to be a business goal.
Right.
Very important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There's some questions coming in and comments that I want to get to from the audience here. First of all, this is one that I know you're going to be interested in, JJ, and that is, can you spell your company's name? So, despite the proper pronunciation you had, can you tell us how to spell Mavim, just so they can learn more about you?
Yeah, M-A-V-I-V-I-M, Mavim.
Yeah.
Did I do it right?
M-A-V-I-M.
Oh, M-A-V-I-M.
Yeah. So it's not M-A-L-V-E-N as suggested on YouTube. It's Mavim.
Sorry for that.
That's all right. That's all right. So a lot of people joining from throughout the world here today, everywhere from India to Denver to in between, South Africa. We've got someone from South Africa here as well. So thank you for commenting there. Just a couple of comments here that I want to get to related to the question I asked earlier. I asked the question of when should business process management start? And Alcinda on LinkedIn said that it should take place from the start of the digital transformation planning process, as you need to perform an audit of your current state and what your desired end state should be, which then determines what technologies to deploy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much sums up the entire interview. We don't have to continue. I think that's sort of she solved all of our problems there in that one comment.
She's
I think
looking for a job.
Yes. Maybe so. But I mean, kidding aside, and that is a great comment. Thank you, Alcinda, for that. But that is really spot on, would you say, with how you should approach business processes. Let's talk about current and future state, though.
Yeah.
There's also a mindset or a school of thought within the digital transformation space, especially with software vendors and system integrators, that would suggest don't worry about your current state. It doesn't matter. You're going to replace it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to that?
So again, future states, no-brainer. You need to have your North Star. You need to know where we're going. And then current state, let's say, focus on the areas where you know anyway, there will be a big change. So you better make sure that you understand current way of working. And it's not that you all document it in the right way, but you need to understand the impact on the people. Because if those people don't understand the why and the how of change, you found your saboteurs. So it's more or less, and again, then if you say, it might take me 3 years to do my current state. No. Focus on, for argument's sake, on the supply chain, because there are the big changes. On your customer journey, there are the big changes. To be honest, on your finance processes, hey guys, don't bother.
Right.
But supply chain, customer journey, there where you make the impact with your company, better make sure that how do we work today? What does it mean? And what does it mean then also for the software we're looking for?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there you need to find the software that's really supporting your idea about your new way of working, your new way of generating the supply chain end to end. And certainly for those in Europe, where now ESG is hitting us hard,
Mm.
you can't blame. You can say, "Oh, I'm clean." No. You're responsible for the whole chain. You
Right.
need to understand who's making what waste where, because the legislation people will ask you.
Right.
So you better be sure how it's now and how we're going to change that.
Yeah.
And then understand what does it mean for these people, what does it for my outsourced company. So
Yeah.
that's important. Don't do everything, but do the ones where you know there's a big change.
Yeah. And or where you have areas of competitive differentiation, things that make you intentionally want to be different. You don't want best practice. You don't want the way the software works off the shelf necessarily, because you've developed something that makes you better than your competitors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good stuff there. Want to get to a couple other questions here. I saw a bunch of questions coming in here. If I could figure out my computer, there it is. Here's a question that's sort of related to that. Or this is from Kyler on LinkedIn. Kyler says, JJ, can you parallel path the two, select new technology and BPM optimization, or do you recommend? And this is back to Alcinda's point too. She was suggesting what I would consider the ideal state. If you have the time and resources and the vision to do this, do your BPM work, choose the technology or technologies, then do additional BPM work in more detail once you start implementing the technologies. What about doing in parallel, BPM with software evaluation and selection?
Yeah, I would say again. First of all, I would say depending on the case we're talking, that's of course. But yes, I would say why not? Because then step by step, let me give the politics. Step by step, people say, okay, we're already on the journey.
Right.
So we're not only in a mode of thinking, because people don't like that. People want to see results. So that's a little bit, it's more or less, I would say this is a maybe potentially political correct way of doing.
Yeah.
So you start, for example, for argument's sake, oh, we made a decision. We are going for best of breed. So let's first focus on the supply chain. So then, okay, let's say supply chain. In the meantime, look for one of those 3, 4, 5, 6 vendors that are one of the best of breed leaders in that space. Let's go for that. I know those customers that do that. We do that first, and then we go for whatever customer facing, customer journey.
Right.
Do it there again, and take there a best. But again, BPM leading, software to follow.
Right.
But yes, I can imagine that is politically correct, and people will see then sort of results.
Yeah.
But again, very important. There's one word also: don't rush.
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't want to say you should take all the time in the world. You shouldn't take all the time in the world, but you should take plenty of time up front to do the planning work that includes business process management. And back to that decision latency comment earlier about the team's ability to make quick decisions during an implementation. You're going to make quicker decisions if you have that clarity defined up front, because now you've got the blueprint for how you're going to build the house. To use that analogy, you would never, we wouldn't go out and hire a general contractor to go build a house without giving them the blueprint, or without someone giving them the blueprint of how the software should be built, or how the house should be built. So why would we do the same thing? Why would we do that with it?
And again, therefore, this business process blueprinting is meant to be to get everybody on board. That yes, of course, the why we change, but also the how we change. If that's agreed up front, and then you run the workshops in the greater details, you don't fall into the big trap that people start to argue, why are we changing anyway?
Right.
Before you know, you are back of square one.
Yeah.
And then you will lose the time, because then it has to escalate. So decision makers have to support it. Before you know, you get in brutal politics.
Yeah.
So you better be upfront agreed, and then it can move fast. Because then people think, yeah, I understand.
Right.
And if then a screen is blue or green, nobody cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
As it's logic, I understand it. Okay, I know my role. I know my career. Very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it will go fast.
Yeah. You're touching on an important topic that I want to get into a little bit more, which is change management, as you talk about executive sponsorship and resistance to change and decision making and leadership. All those things sort of tie back to change management. How does business process management enable change management or effective change management?
So our platform is branded by Gartner as a future digital twin of an organization technology. In that technology, we consider, of course, the basics are processes related to people, roles, responsibilities. One of the very important components of the platform is the communication and collaboration. So if and when, and then that means also communication means if I'm a board member, I'm not interested in detail level 6 of a process. I'm interested in what is it going to bring on the 5 strategic intents. I understand that. I understand the word strategic intent, goals, KPIs. But then I'm somebody in a warehouse. I do want to understand the details of a process, but then visualized in a way that I see a visualization where I see, that's a forklift. Of course, that's me on a forklift in a process. Oh, how neat is that? So the communication of the process future way of working should be by the lens of the individual. So the enterprise architect will look at it from an architect standpoint. Somebody on the ground will look at it from his little forklift, and the other one thinks in intents. That's communication. Now that we are in agreement, then we need to ask the people, please confirm. The collaboration platform, it's Microsoft Teams and all that stuff. Confirm, agree, and if not agree, comment. So that people get the feeling, I'm engaged. I decide my own destiny, so that nobody can then say, maybe typical Dutch, not invented by myself, it cannot be anything. So, no, you were engaged. You had comments. Look here. So we're all in agreement, let's go. And that takes time. But again, a platform will support that. It is measurable. And also very important, if certain people don't comment, hey, now suddenly that's a potential area of, hey, what's going on? So
Right.
BPM in a platform like this Mavim platform will support the adoption of change.
Right.
And that is so important. If people don't want whatever you want as we had with this Hans Mulder, this professor, it was in time delivered, it was in budget, but what happened? Yeah, nobody used it.
Yeah, no business value.
Yeah, no, and nobody used it. Of that group in whatever Italy or wherever, they didn't use it. Yeah, big failure.
Yeah.
So then again, you need to make sure that people are committed to work. We have customers where the people said, "When do we get the system? I can't wait for the change." That is the dream.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
When do I get the system?
Yeah, because we're so excited to use it. Yeah.
They understand. Hey, this will bring better and let's say smart work.
Yeah.
Versus all that labor intense, not that clever work.
Yeah. Yeah. The manual searching of information, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Also, at the heart of business process management, in the heart of Alcinda's question a moment ago, or her comment about where business process management fits and how the timing should work, there's also current state, future state. And so really at the heart of change management is how is the organization changing? And we can't be good at change management. We can't do change management well if we don't understand current state versus future state. And so at the heart of BPM is really a way to capture that, to kind of look at the way things are today, more importantly, how everything's going to be in the future and what are the gaps. And that becomes the premise for how you communicate and how you handle change management. So I think that's another reason why BPM is so important. But you were talking about business value or lack of thereof, of people not using the software. Congratulations, you finished the time on budget. Congratulations, you finished on time, but people aren't using the system. So is that a success? Some might say, yes, that was a successful project because you were on time, on budget. Most, I think you and I would agree, it's not a success if you're not getting people to use it. How does BPM help people or help organizations get better usage of the software and better value out of the technology?
So let's say again, good preparation, good gives them feeling that they're engaged, and then at the end, what's also important, and that's what we created, that we are in any engagement, we are part of the core new application. So we make sure that we have on this is maybe very technical, but on screen level, we have an integrated view. So if and when somebody in the morning, first day, he gets engaged, he starts a new application, and he said, "Oh, I had my training, but oh, oops, what?" In the case of Mavim, press the help button. You are in this order entry. Okay, help. Then help, contextual help will start, and you will see your role in this situation, in this screen. This is your work instruction, totally integrated, so that people, first of all, know whatever happens, there's always help. Clarity, and also very important. And one of the classic examples, people say in the morning, "Oh yeah, let me call the support desk, guys." I know customers that said we shut down the support desk for phones. You need to first go to help. Because you can see that if they didn't press the button help, guess what? You don't get help. You need first to figure it out yourself, and then if you don't know, then you have to send in a ticket. So now you send a ticket that will be passed to ServiceNow. Ticket is supported, and immediately the support desk sees, this professional was in that order entry screen. Oh yeah, and oh yeah, indeed he's right. Because of course, after go live, there will be for sure things that can improve. But that's the way to do it. So it's totally integrated, and then people have to comment, and then of course support desk need to respond very fast. So people get the comfort feeling. Oh yeah, I get help. And then of course people will not moan, and they will adopt to the new way of working, and they will not do what's also classic. Sometimes people say, "Yeah, let's have the old system to the left and the new system to the right." Guys, no, it has to be only the new system.
A non-digital twin is what that's called.
Non-digital twins.
A manual twin.
So the big trick we have is that is very neat. It's integrated. So the process of the business into the application process, into the screen. Click and you see it. So you can use it for training purposes. You can use it for support purposes, but also in your. And now after 1 year, somebody comes to the corner and he says, "I want to pay cash." Oh, how to handle a cash transaction? Okay, help, cash. Work instruction.
Right. That's a great points. Speaking of great points, there's more comments here coming in on social media. And again, from Alcinda, problem with best practices are they don't necessarily have your business context. So similar to what you were saying, that I would argue, I'd go one step further and say there is no such thing as best practices. There's things that people call best practices, but I think it's misleading to say that they're best practice, because is there some sort of universal arbitrator of what best practice is? That'd be the other question. Or does only Microsoft or only SAP or only Oracle knows what best practices are? I guess that is more of a rhetorical question as far as.
If I will be the audience, the best practice is for you to judge if you understand them.
Yeah.
And again, it's brutal to say, don't rely on the word, we have the best practice.
Yeah.
Check for references, ask for the real decision makers, and then show me
what the software does, and you decide.
Certainly, you decide. Is that? Do I recognize my future? And if that indeed, there are companies that have indeed visions on how should you run your organization, because they have the time and they did that, and they have domain expertise, and those companies do exist.
Right.
So ask them, show me the proof.
Yeah. It's a good approach. Sound advice for sure. Here's a comment I want to get to. This is from Zalid on YouTube. And Zalid says, we're developing our digital strategy through a consultancy firm. As per their first draft, they only touch a few components, and we couldn't develop a business case for our board approval. So I guess I want to come back to that. When you look at business value, you look at the business case, how does BPM fit into that? Or first of all, I guess before I jump around too much here and ask that question of you, JJ, let me get your reaction to Zahid's comment on how the consultancy could only touch a few components of their business, didn't cover all of the business processes that were required to put together an end-to-end picture. Is that something that's common that you see when they don't have a proper BPM phase up front or a proper BPM tool? Is that something you see often?
If we get engaged, to be honest, no. But I will be scared.
Yeah,
If I read that, that is
it's not good.
again, if somebody says don't bother, this is a classic example, and this is maybe sorry for being Dutch.
You can't change being Dutch since since you are
So
Dutch.
this is how should I say it in a political way? If a board doesn't approve that we prepare ourselves in the proper way, so that we do understand where we're going. Again, I don't know the details, but if the board says no, don't bother about the areas which are not of interest, then I would agree.
Right.
So there will be differentiate. There we have the customer facing. There we have the supply chain. Those typical hot buttons today. They said only concentrate for that. I would agree. There where it makes sense, go for that. But if somebody says don't bother preparation, just go for it. Yeah, that is set up for failure.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
a good indicator or predictor of failure. And in this case, I don't know if the board didn't approve the project, therefore it did move forward. Maybe it's a good thing if the processes weren't adequately defined and if the board didn't feel comfortable, that might actually be
good, of course. If they think, hey, that's not us.
Yeah.
If they don't recognize their own company, then it's it would stop immediately.
Right. Here's a really good question. I was not planning on touching this topic, but I think you'll like this, JJ. This is from Matt on YouTube. Matt says, is it a standard practice to model the enterprise architecture for optimizing business processes?
So let me turn around. So you're building your future state business process blueprint, but processes are supported, of course, by applications and in your IT landscape. So there, where that I'm going to re-platform for certain processes, it's more than interested to understand what application platforms will be replaced, what will stay. So you need to have an end-to-end view on my current state of my enterprise architecture and my future state, so that you understand after implementing this new application which other application will be interfacing with that application, so that I understand how to maintain, how to do all my testing, and when because assuming that everybody is in the same route, we go to the cloud software will have every 8 weeks to 12 weeks new updates. So you need to understand every update, what's the impact on the processes, but also what's the impact on the end-to-end chain of the applications that are all connected to each other. So therefore you need to model your enterprise architecture for that specific domain where that will be touched.
Right.
Don't try to model end-to-end architecture from a company of 100,000 employees. No. For the piece that the customer journey will hit the website, it will hit it will that. Okay, that we need to figure out. That's the piece we're going to focus on.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Here's another interesting question from Eric on LinkedIn. Says, how do you ensure alignment between the dynamic nature of business processes, which are addressed by BPM solutions such as Mavim, and the rigidity often associated with ERP systems? So in other words, you've got dynamic business processes, flexible, that are constantly changing, that you can change at any time. And then you've got ERP systems, which are relatively rigid. So how do you reconcile the two?
Yeah. So again, a very good question. Again, that's why it's not about Mavim, but that's why for example, like yourself, Eric, that's why you need to figure out in your enterprise architecture the base layered approach. So your ERP system should be considered as your system of record. So that is your base layer. And then on top of that, for those things where it makes your company unique, you need additional layers. So then you find your, let's say, best of breed solutions around the ERP system. And then the next layer is, and let's for argument's sake, the low code, like the Microsoft Power Platform, where you have the innovative things that makes you unique and also creates flexibility around brutal applications like an ERP system where I need 6 screens to do my time sheeting. You can have a little app that is figuring it out in one sheet and then feed the ERP system. That's the way to do it. So then you can have flexibility in layer 1, have unique capabilities in layer 2, for supply chain, whatever package, and then for your base layer, system record, you have the ERP, rock solid, to be relied, always on, invoice go out, but flexibility in the layers.
Right.
And in your BPM engine, you should describe that in a very clever way so people understand. And again, it needs to be architected.
Right. Yeah. And it's, even more reason why you want to define your business processes up front is so that you can identify where the ERP system that you're deploying might be too rigid.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That happens.
No problem.
You're going to have some areas where ERP is going to add a ton of value. You want that rigidity and standardization, but there's going to be some parts of your business where it doesn't fit. And that's okay. You have to figure out, what are you going to do? Are you going to customize the software? Are you going to use a manual process? Are you going to do a bolt-on system or add a third-party bolt-on system to address that capability?
Exactly.
There's different options. But if you don't know that stuff up front, during the business process exercise before you start implementation, you're going to realize halfway through the implementation that, oops, this ERP system doesn't fit. Now I have to recast my entire plan because now I have to change my processes, which might be more painful than I'd like, or I might have to do some customization. I might have to go get a third-party bolt-on. Whatever it is going to take extra time and money that you didn't plan on if you would have had the BPM stuff up
There
front.
you go. And certainly for those implementations where you go cross-border, and certainly in Europe, again, there are legislation with all cultural things that's in certain cases, everybody wants to work one way. So let's be as standard, as robotized as possible. But guess what?
Right.
In France, they were completely different than in Germany and in Italy. So therefore, you need to apply the cultural things. How do we treat our customers? Use the same platform, but then implement it in a different way, or have little applications that support the local cultural things. Need to be upfront designed, and don't assume if we do this one brutal Salesforce implementation across Europe, everybody will adopt to that and will applaud.
Right.
I can predict the failure already. No, doesn't happen.
Right.
You need to apply local cultural, local way of working, having still the same application. But given the high flexibility and high configurable of all those applications, it can be done, but upfront designed.
Right. Yeah. Very, very important. And then, I think BPM also, by doing that BPM work up front, it also enables agile transformations, because you can do the business process work up front, have that clear vision of what your processes are going to be, and then you can go deploy very quickly. So it actually supports more of an agile approach, even though some might argue, well, that's waterfall. If you do all your business process work and requirements definition up front, that's waterfall. Well, it's really, I guess, more of a hybrid, though, but it is enabling that fast, agile rollout once you get to the implementation phase of the project.
Absolutely. And again, then back to my example, if you then have a workshop with the Italian team, with the French team, and the German team, they will feel that you listen to them. They understand that you really understand their other way of working.
Yeah.
And they will agree, we have same platform, but we will just configure it a little bit different. Nicely designed, but then also maintainable.
Right.
If then the French have a request for change, you understand, oh yeah, of course, because there we did this little switch to the left, and in Germany we did to the right.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have the feeling, same platform, but we still do it the French way.
Right. Right. Exactly. Which is important. You're going to have parts of the world and parts of the
important.
organization. They're going to take that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very, very good. Here's a question, a really good question from Kyler on LinkedIn. You touched on the vendor relationship, but I wonder how much influence they should have on your business process. Should you match the business process to fit the software, or customize to fit the process?
So, if I would be the audience, my process is leading, my company is leading, but you should listen to the vendor. So how, Mr. Vendor, can you apply my way of working, and how can you configure that in your software? And if you're still in a software vendor selection package, my processes are leading, and I'll pick the software that is configurable to my needs. For argument's sake, it addresses 90% of my needs. Okay, so the 10% left, another advice, don't change the software, but then create the layers around it. This new low-code, no-code application layers that makes it then specific to my needs. And be honest, sometimes, because you really have to be honest, Are you want this now because that's your current way of working? Or are you indeed want something that's really innovative that nobody's done before? Be
Right.
honest to yourself. If you want to automate the current way of working, be honest to yourself.
Right.
Innovative, be brutal to the vendor.
Right. Yeah. Great point. Great advice. What about, we haven't talked about this yet, but as we were talking about current state versus future state, one of the topics that's related to that is business process mining.
Yeah.
So what is business process mining, and how is that different, or how does it fit within business process management? That's kind of that overarching concept of business process management.
Yeah. So business process mining is is a technique whereby software is tapping into in data, and the data is gathered and is in such a way that it is visualizing the real way of working in a automated process software package. So it shows you. So I have a future design. I would like to work like this. By the way, how do we work today? So then in a sudden you see the gaps, and then in a sudden you see the business case, and you see, oh wow, here can we improve. So it's visualizing current way of working and where you have the misalignment or efficiency gains in a process or in process in several teams or multiple countries, so that you understand the business case of change. That is current state. The preferable, what I prefer is that after go live with a new application, make sure that embedded in that new application you have near real time constant monitoring on, so process mining monitoring, so that you after the change very fast will see how your users are using the application and who is conforming to the design or who's not conforming to design, or also very funny sometimes, where are finding people already little shortcuts so that even the throughput is going faster. So you can, so that we thought it should be like this. Look here, somebody found this little route. That's clever. Let's apply it for everybody now.
Right.
So that you constantly, because certain CEOs tell me, a project, we need to do it, but the real money going to make after the project. And certainly when we do this near real-time process mining, where we have constantly monitoring about where can we still improve, where can we find the misalignment, and how can we keep in compliance towards design versus current way of working. And that constantly layered on top of each other will give great insights. And then continuous improvement managers love this, because that's the art of the possible.
Right. Yeah, and it's also a good reminder too that implementation or transformation should not end at the time of go live.
Oh no.
There's a lot of work that should happen if you want to get real business value out of your investment. There's a business process mining is a great tool to do that, as is business process management in general. But it's fascinating to me the dynamic or the organizational behavior that we see so often, which is, I'm just so relieved that we went live. Now I can go back to my real job, and we're done here. Let's move on and go do the next thing. But and in many ways, that's when the real work begins. Now you've got the platform in place. Hopefully you've improved some of your processes, but now inevitably you fell a little bit short on where you could be getting business value. So why not do some process mining? Look at, are we really getting that standard operating model we thought we were? Are we really increasing efficiency? If not, why? You know, if let's just say business process mining showed us that we thought a process was going to take this long, but it's actually taking this long. Why is that? Maybe people need to be retrained. Maybe there's some root cause. There has to be a root cause of why we're not getting the business value. And business process mining can be a good way to optimize your transformation investment. And then why not? So why wouldn't you just use Visio or some other free process mapping software that's out there? Like, in other words, why would we want to use a product like Mavim, a more robust tool like that, when we have Visio? But what's the advantage there?
So thank you for that good question. This is not a sales pitch, but Mavim is using Visio. So we use the Visio ease of use with a database repository underneath. So the other question to Mavim guys, why do you need a repository? Because what you want is that that a process is at the end in an organization, could be, for argument's sake, 300 Visios, but you want them all to interconnect. from an end-to-end process until level 6 of the details. So, and then therefore, if you have a freeware design tool, you can't connect that in a structure. So you need a structure, and a structure needs a database. And in this case, in the Mavim case, any object in Visio is a database object where you can have elements, data elements, whatever, so that you can, for argument's sake, ask the tool, or tell me more about, how many of this or how many of that, or why is it that, and what are the risks, what are our controls, for example, on the process, what applications are supporting that. You can put any data into that repository, which is then visualized in a Visio. So it is still Visio, but there's a massive database underneath that is building and giving you all the answers you would like from a process view, a board view, a enterprise architecture, Archimate view, all from the same source with a different lens. So even from a Power BI lens, show me all my applications, risks versus value, not from an Archimate, so the typical enterprise arc, but from a business view, in a Power BI view. Oh, wow. Therefore, you need a database under Visio.
Yeah. And it not only does it show the connectivity between these different business processes, but it allows you to also capture additional details that you wouldn't capture in a Visio diagram. Like, for example, if I have a step in a process that maybe it's just one box on a process map, but there's underlying details of what's the form I use, or what kind of information should I gather? What are the questions I should ask the customer to create a customer order? That's a step in a process, but you also have details you have to capture there. So from a training and enablement and just a clarity of definition of a process, a tool like Mavim can add those extra layers. And
your work instructions which you make in Word.
Yeah.
Which are connected to this object in a process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to get to a couple audience questions, and then I'm going to ask you sort of a summary wrap-up question here in a moment, JJ. So just a couple comments here. Alcinda, again, has a great comment on LinkedIn. Agility and flexibility is necessary because changes or disruptions are not only instant, but can be driven by external factors that are, like JJ says, unplanned. So great point there from Alcinda. So thank you for that. Here's an interesting question. You and I have never talked about this, but I find it fascinating. I don't have a good answer to this. I'm curious to see if you do. This is from Dennis on LinkedIn. Dennis says, can AI enhance decision-making during your BPM initiative? So AI, how does AI fit into all this? Does AI fit into business process management?
So the question about decision-making is, so you can imagine that that Mavim is a Microsoft-based platform. So if there are Microsoft lovers in the audience, you can assume that, of course, Copilot is totally integrated into the platform. So how can Copilot, so generative AI, support BPM initiatives? For argument's sake, if and when an organization with 1,000+ users, you will have process owners that create, let's say at the end, on level 6, they create all the work instructions. So if you have 20 people working on work instructions, there's 20 people that have some are artists in writing and others are not artists. So you will have a very inconsistent 6,000 work instructions. Copilot, please help. Please restructure, make it consistent. That's the art of artificial intelligence in BPM. In BPM, for example, our process mining engine is based on Power BI. So Copilot for Power BI. So you can, of course, have a data analyst check for the inconsistency in the process. You can also ask Copilot, find me the inconsistency. Just find it. So ask, he will give it to you, and then you find it and you see it, and then you can have way faster. You can ask what is the best practice for a supply chain process?
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you can say, oh, hey, this is the best practice from whatever my consulting firm. Let me check on Copilot.
Yeah.
Show me a Visio, a supply chain thing, and then he comes up, and then you can have a discussion.
Right.
Because he finds it in the domain, available. That's of course those are the little use cases that we see happening in our case, because we have Copilot. So then and our customers then use Copilot in Mavim, but then they use Bard from Google, and they have the other ones, ChatGPT, and then benchmark the three of them. So really clever.
Interesting.
Clever to ask ChatGPT, what is your view? Bard from Google, and then Copilot.
Yeah.
And then the discussion with companies like yourself. What is your view?
Yeah.
Well, then make the wise decision. So it's helping indeed the decision-making process, because you have unlimited resource findings.
Right.
While, if you have to Google it yourself, it takes too long.
Right.
Those engines are fast.
Yeah.
That is this. But again, those use cases about those work instructors is a real life case, because every so often new software, new impacts on the process. So you have to change a lot of stuff. Copilot does it for you.
Yeah.
Automated. So the smart work back to the people, and let's say the hard work to Copilot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Great question.
It's a really good question. It sort of opens up a whole nother dimension of BPM, which is, with all these free AI tools that are out there, the generative AI tools like Bard and Copilot. A lot of it's not free, but a lot of organizations are using it. You got ChatGPT, which you can use for free. So AI is a tool that's out there at the consumer level. A lot of people understand AI or are toying around with it or playing with it. BPM is a good way to add a little bit of structure to how people maybe will use AI to do their jobs better, because some people may not fully understand AI. There may be preferred tools that we want our organization using. There may be preferred use cases where we want our people to use AI in these instances. And here's how we envision doing that. It gets back to business process mapping and defining that future state so that you can get input from everyone and how they've seen AI help them do their jobs. But ultimately, someone has to decide this is how we're going to do it as a company, assuming we want a sort of a standard way of operating across an enterprise. So BPM can enable better use of AI, I would argue.
Yeah, it is at the end the formalized decision you made. This is the coming 3 months we're going to work like this.
Yeah.
For 6 months or whatever year, and then of course, depending on what happens in the outside world, and you have to change. You keep on use these kind of clever techniques to innovate, and then of course apply in your applications.
Yeah. And the BPM tool becomes that single source of truth for how we should be operating as a business.
Yeah, from the several angles, from the enterprise architect, from the process owners, from the application owners, from what have you, people that need to have access to the single source of truth.
Yeah. So just to bring this all full circle and to tie it all together, how do you recommend that organizations get started on their business process management efforts? What are some tips to just get started and those top recommendations you might have?
Yeah. So again, take your time. Make sure that your vision, strategy, and what you want to achieve is clear, well documented, and agreed. Make sure that you have a strong sponsor. And a strong sponsor is not somebody that signs off for the budget and also is tapping you on the back and telling you good job. No. Somebody that owns also the end result from a board level or at least management level, and then also supporting you in the early days of the preparation, so that all the things we are going to change is agreed up front. So anything you have to change that will impact the organization needs to be agreed up front. Otherwise, during the implementation, you will lose time. The latest you'll make decisions. And at that time, maybe you have 20 consultants on board, and 20 consultants waiting for 1 month. That's a lot of money. You lose a lot of money. So the better your preparation, the better your support from the board, the faster the implementation will go. That is my recommendation.
Yeah. And what I love about BPM tools too, just to bring it back to your last point there, is BPM tools can be a way to take a lot of detail about the operating model and the operational detail of an organization and bring it back up to the board level. So it's a great way to communicate from the board at the strategy level all the way on down to the frontline employee who has to execute on some of these transactions every day. Yeah. So it's a great closing point. Well, I want to thank you for being here today. This was a great conversation. We could have spent hours more. Of course, we have spent hours today talking about BPM before this podcast, and we'll continue to do so after. But thank you to the audience for being here today. Great questions. If you'd like to watch this episode that will feature this interview, we'll edit it and add some additional content. That episode will be released a week from tomorrow. So Wednesday of next week, the episode of Transformation Ground Control podcast will feature this interview. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to see this week's episode as well as past episodes of that show. So be sure to check that out. And we do these live discussions every week, same time, same place, on whatever platform you're listening or watching here today. So thank you all for being here. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week on the same time, same place. Take care. We'll see you soon.